Today we gonna have a conversation about. I'm sure we're gonna be talking about got good produce, but also we're gonna talk about food system. We're gonna talk about maybe a new way, a different approach to things. And I actually know this business quite starting to know it quite well because I've been on a visit. I talked with Stefano from Macknade a couple of times, and they're doing some incredible things down in Kent here in the UK. So I'm really excited about today's conversation and actually maybe opening up a bit the conversation about how can we actually do things a bit different, how can we think differently about food retail, the food system, the supply chains, and all the things that's connected building a great food business. So welcome to the show, Stefano. It's great to have you here.
No, it's great to be here. I know it's you know how excited I am to be on your show, Michael. So I appreciate it, and it's really good to be here.
Yeah, and we've been trying to get you on for a while, and then now we finally made it. So I'm really excited about you, and I think it'd be really good for people that hasn't heard about Magnade, your journey, and the journey you're on right now, and where you're located, and what kind of size of business are we talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Macknade is actually a place. We're tucked down here in the southeast of the UK, in Kent, and my family will get. I suppose start with my name, Stefano. It's not a particularly English name. My father's Italian, and it's my mother who's Kentish, and on her side of the family, we're farmers. So my father came across when he married her from Italy, southern Italy, in the 70s. But our heritage here at Macknade goes back to mid 1800s, where we farmed, a very traditional, conventional Kentish farm. And really, it was my father who, having come over early 70s, started in 79 a pick your own on part of the farm that we had, which was, of course, a trend that had come out of the US at the time. And really, what we now have as our food hall at Macknade, over sort of 7 acres site we now have, is about 10,000 square foot food hall, really grew out of what was his market garden, sort of 20 acres of weird and wonderful produce that he was growing back in the late 70s. The likes of aubergine, courgette, mange tout, things that are sort of generic, standard fare now, but hadn't been really seen in the UK, say 30, 40 years ago. So now as I say, we have the best way of explaining it, I suppose, is we don't farm, so it's not a farm shop. It is in effect a food hall. I mean, it's a premium supermarket offer, dare I say. Here we have a delicatessen counter, we have a butchery, green grocery. We have an F&B cafe, restaurant attachment. We run events. We have a number of other tenants on our site, a Waited Kitchen, for example, another small business who will take our produce that's past its best on the shelf, convert it through to coleslaw, salads, dishes, etc. That in turn we then retail back again through our own site. We have an outside deck area over the summer that has a number of other F&B offers, sort of tacos, small businesses, pizza, etc., that can come and set up in the summer and sell direct to consumers as well on our site. So we're kind of a food hub, but you have our customers who come, who do their weekly shop with us, through to those who seek us out for very sort of special, specific ingredients, so all encompassing of the joys of food and drink.
And and what was really interesting you talked about there is also like you're not just a food hall. I think it was really interesting. I was down there. There was, and you mentioned just here, there's like other independent food operator that comes in to your business and actually trade as well, so like street food in principle.
So this is why I'm again following a lot of what you do and others you've spoken to. For us, we're operators. And as I said, I grew up. When we stopped farming, I was in my early 20s,
Hmm.
and the reasons for stopping farming were just the pressures that conventional farms had during the 80s and 90s, and we decided to focus in on this retail offer that we had. The reason I mention that is you see a lot of farm shops, for example, that in effect are farmers looking to sell, but they just want to farm, right? So they don't have the nuanced enjoyment of the skill set that I think comes from bricks and mortar retail, bricks and mortar hospitality, which I think is hugely important. And why I say that is because in effect we act as a hub, we draw people in. We act as kind of a conduit from producer through to end consumer. And so for us as Macknade, it's how we create a space that people want to be in, a community that people want to be part of. And so part of that will be having other providers, having other operators, and supporting them to create their own businesses and move forward with. And that has to be done in a commercial manner. And I think for me that's important to show that how localized food and drink hubs can exist. They don't need to be fluffy and kind of almost patronized, but they can exist as commercial hubs as well that bring local economics back into the locality and provide a really interesting product. So yeah, we have a number of other businesses that we work with on the site itself, and of course, as a retail hospitality operation, we have sort of hundreds of suppliers that we front end as well.
Yeah, and I thought it was really interesting because you have a cafe offering inside the food hall, and you could see when we were there, me and my family were there, or you could hear there was a lot of locals in the weekend. It was on Sunday. There was lots of local people there, and that was their meeting place. And then some of them did some shopping afterwards. But that's where they connected as well. So like it looked like a community hub where people had that cup of tea or coffee or meal or whatever it is that brings them together.
Yeah, and this is, so we're a generational business. So when it's not a startup. I came into the business as a family business. So for me, it's very important to understand, how do I drive the business on? How do I really build on what my parents had previously done? And they sort of unwittingly, I suppose, they created this community through what was an incredible land-based business. And so for me, that's a really important part of what we do. Is we do act as a space that people can come into and connect. I mean, we're very much a purpose-driven business, and that purpose is bringing the community together around incredible food and drink. And I remember, when I'm 44, so a kid of the 80s. I remember when supermarkets really kicked on, and there was that kind of shift from people meeting, I suppose, traditionally might have met at church, right? For those kind of casual conversations that people would have met, would have discussed in the community. Those kind of 5-10 minute conversations with your neighbours you don't want to get to, but it's good to see them. That kind of started to shift to the supermarket, and the idea that the supermarket, you push your trolley and you catch 5 minutes with someone and keep up with how their family's doing. And for me, that's the sort of opportunity that was there and that we've kind of built upon, because it's so much more meaningful, I think, than you get from visiting your local Tesco's, for example. And we're not only able to add real value to incredible products by getting people to buy them, we're then able to add value to our community directly by being in a space that has an important part to the community. Yeah, and from my background as a farming family, we farmed over at Macknade, a lot longer in Kent, but in Macknade over 6 generations. And part of that was very much people based, because 50, 60 years ago, a farm depended on people to come in and collect the crop and help the harvest, etc. You had a lot of people who were connected to the land. As farming has changed and the lands have shifted, and the way agriculture occurs with much fewer number of people involved these days, an element of that's lost. So our business has returned back to that point of having a real sense of community to it and bringing people back to it, whether it's a team working within it, whether it's a local people coming and using the cafe or the shop. But in turn, what I think is also exciting is that we place make. And when I say we, I talk about our sector more broadly, our peers elsewhere in the country. We know that Londoners, as an example, coming down into Kent, particularly post-COVID, with sort of an expectation of what the sort of food and drink offering is in London, find the likes of our food halls and others around. And that really brings an offering to the town and where they then want to move and live. So again, and I think what that also does, it provides a safe space where sometimes outsiders coming in can create a bit of a tension with the locals who already live there. But actually, that kind of space that's a safe space, it's around food and drink, everyone buys into its identity is really important. And that for me is what Macknade does. It creates that real sense of place that the community can come to, and has a commercial value as well. And it's always been an important part for me, is to show that this isn't just done because we love doing it, but it doesn't really have any longevity or sustainability in itself as a model. But this is a sustainable model, right? It drives a profit, right? And that profit comes because people trust what we do. They appreciate the price points we put our products at. We work closely with our producers. And so when we talk about what the models of the future look like, you think at the moment the independent sector is very disparate, it's very chopped up, but actually we know that individually and sort of 2, 3, 4 sites, they can work, right? So there's a system there, I think, that has real value with regards to getting the community into a space they love, engaging with produce that is relevant and supportive of a much better natural environment.
And if you should explain a bit about, what is your purpose, your mission, your vision, the direction the business is going now. It looks like you've done that transformation from leaving farming, going into retail, and in principle now you're a food hub, as you say, which is more like an experimental hospitality retail kind of environment, I would say. What is it? What is it? What is the purpose you keep on holding on to, and how do you bring that into the future then?
Yeah, so I feel I think a particular factors came together from my own point of view. When I continue to look at forward strategies and what I've done and what we've done collectively as a business and as a family, and sort of very aware of I had a particular set of realities that came together to put me where I was. I said it was a generational business, so it's a startup. I've always rallied against that kind of idea of entrepreneurship. I find it almost as too singular. It puts too much emphasis on an individual, for example. And for me, it is about the collective. And I suppose I grew up on a family farm. I had that safety net that a good family provides. A lot of family around me is the way with farming businesses, and the warmth of a functioning family, I think, is hugely important. And that's kind of really shaped. I've worked with my parents. I spent a lot of time with them. So for me, that's always been a core part. My parents always supported that sense of aspiration. That it's not that this is what you must do. It's understand what you want to do and work towards that, and we'll support you to do that. And I always felt that very much. So for me, the business should reflect that. It should support people's aspirations. It's not a case of saying this is just what we would do, because I think people have different aspirations. It may be that people just want a safe place to come into work. They want to be able to come in, they see people they know, feel that they're valued, and go home. There are others who want to progress and have a career and move on, and there are others that it's about the food and drink itself. They might want to go sideways into another industry. So for me, that a place like ours is about creating the opportunity for those aspirations to be delivered on. So that was absolutely part of it. Then we always talked, again, being connected with the land, you're very aware of the natural environment, at the same time, a business commercial importance. So it's a case of trying to marry that up. Yeah, and I fell into anthropology actually in the university. Terrible. Yeah, I was bad at. Yeah, I didn't study hard enough, but actually, fortunately, I then ended up, and it really sung to my own personal interests. But I really value humanity. I thought what we achieve as humans is incredible, and I say this in very difficult times at the moment, as we know in the global context. But when you look at the best of what we do, it is something incredible. So for me, I then try to get, well, how does that fit environment, humanity? It's all these grandiose statements. What is it? And it's starting to listen to. I don't think this is the value of podcasts, of reading, etc. Is understanding what others are doing. This idea of infinite goal, and it's not necessarily something that we can achieve, but if we can head towards something. So yeah. So for me, it comes out of harmony. So I sat on this and say, right, it's about human and environmental harmony. If I get up every morning, what is it that really pushes me on? It's the idea that even if I just take little steps and turn people around me, we edge towards a part. Yeah, when I leave this world, hopefully I'll have moved a little bit closer to the idea of human and environmental harmony. And in the context of our business as a food and drink hub, as a food and drink retailer, a food and drink hospitality operator, we're in a good position to help others as well take steps towards that direction. And we worked on the idea of purpose and say, we know we bring communities together. My parents always did. They didn't realize they built this brand almost of Macknade. That people talk about Macknade and want to go there. And so we thought, that clear purpose is that idea of bringing communities together around incredible food and drink. And then again, as we're through that process, that mission of what we talk about, favorite place. Ultimately, we want Macknade to be people's favorite place. And that comes from what our customers tell us. So it's very much based on this idea of looking to try and lower negative impact on our natural world through food and drink and our consumption, whilst championing what the best of humanity is, in the sense of people coming together in and around food and drink. So I suppose that, in a nutshell, that's what we kind of try and work towards.
And is there any ambition of expanding the business? Because I also know that you said that I know we have a shared passion around, or maybe a love affair with it. It's the Singermans in the US, where actually the reason why Ari and Paul expanded the business was because they had people that had ambitions in the business. It was not because they wanted a bigger business, and now they have 16 different food businesses. It's not 18 actually, I think now, and 700 employees, and they have partners in the business in that one town, in Ann Arbor, outside Michigan, in the US, which is it's a reasonable small town. I don't know if it's size of Brighton, maybe a bit bigger where I'm from, but it's quite incredible again, because if they wanted to keep these people and they wanted to, slowly move the mission, and now it's 40 years, and now they are thinking about how do we actually hand over the business to the community and the employees. That's where they are now. But is there similar kind of approach that you are taking into the future? Do you want to expand the business in the speed it can take the expansion and the opportunities, of course, that comes around?
Absolutely, and no, I'm yeah so glad you brought up Zingerman's already. For me again, as you said, we talked about it a lot. Just the impact that Zingerman's. I've never been there. I've never but quite often when I'm looking at trying to contextualize my own thinkings, our own thinkings as a business, it's looking out to our peers, and Zingerman's as someone who's, they're a group, a collective who come up all the time. Yeah, just for example, for me, just one of the light bulb moments from them is that the concept of thriving versus growth.
Mm.
And not to say there's a tension there, but understanding that, that sort of capitalist, pure capitalist growth of driving cash value back to shareholder is one direction, but actually, does that produce a thriving business? I just love that idea that as we move forward, it's about is everyone thriving, and that's something I've really taken from them. Again, something we do a lot at the moment, and trying to work on more and more myself is that visioning piece, and the number of others that have picked up. Yeah, well, what does it look like in the future? I think coming from generational businesses and just where again my mind thinks I like that. Well, what do we look like in 5 years, 10 years time, and then working back so that we can engineer a way of getting there. And so, absolutely, for me, it is a case of don't get me wrong. I mean, there is a commercial excitement to growing a business, right? I mean, it's not just it's all about good. There's fun, but that's not enough. I mean, that for me, that isn't the case. It's can we touch more people in what we do in a way that is sustainable, and it comes back to that infinite goal of actually getting closer to an environmental and human harmony. And that for me becomes back to the value of other bricks and mortar spaces. And I think on that as well, when you go back 10, 15 years ago when the internet started to bite and there was kind of a question around everything's going to go online, everything's going to digital, isn't it? An
Mm.
exciting new world. Well, what does that mean for a retailer? What does that mean for a hospitality operator who has space? For me, we really see, in particular the last 2 years with COVID and other elements, the importance of the value of the operator in physical space. And so, yes, we start to look at other spaces continually. We had 2 other sites last year. Unfortunately, with the trials of COVID, they were a separate business. I had to take a step back out from one of the sites, and that's part of the pains and learnings of business, I guess. But it was based on that element of wanting to get Macknade into other other places, other towns, whereby I mean, in our locality, our region of Kent's very different from the US, I guess, but where we could touch more people and show that there was a commercial value to it, front up more localized businesses. So we added that shop face for other producers, and also be part of that placemaking whereby you're seeing in Kent, there's a desire to regenerate a lot of towns post Second World War in the 60s and 70s. And I think what we do, one is a food and drink hub, but the way that we deliver that Macknade experience is an important part to bringing a sort of texture and heartfelt interaction into the urban space as well. So for me, it is absolutely that there's an interest there. I think we have a brand and a product that is fantastic, but I think we also have a purpose and responsibility to take what we do into other places, which goes back to what you said earlier, and I think also the Zingerman's point isn't necessarily that it's just a cookie cutter, repeatable,
Mm.
1, 2, 3, 10 Macknades, 14. It's a
Yeah.
case of what's suitable in what space, and is that a separate business? Is it a partnership? Is it do we have some holding in that, or is it someone who's come from our business and wants their own? Yes, and I think that for me is that thrive element of Zingerman's to say rather than going at pace, are we going at the right pace to deliver the growth, the good growth that allows everyone to thrive, and that's not necessarily more of Macknade explicitly. It may well be other, whether it's different producers, maybe different brands, whatever it might be. But I think that for me is really an exciting proposition. That kind of partnership approach to growth that means that everyone thrives.
Yeah, and then the whole growth question, I think we had some reflection on it during the pandemic in food industries and hospitality, but I think we're a bit back in the same kind of lingo and approach. And it's not about thriving, it's not making things work really well for everyone. And I think there's still some really big questions to be asked because the system is breaking down and it's just a question about time. And that's not being a hippie about it, but I can definitely see the ones that's thriving understand they're not scaling numbers, they're scaling their story and the philosophy, as you're talking about. If that's the food philosophy or the community philosophy, that's what it's about, and that's what people are hungering for, no matter what. That's being part of something that's bigger than just a product or another coffee shop.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And So two sort of thoughts on that as well. I think one is, we have a bit of heritage that we put into our business. We talk about quality and community since 1847. Yeah, that's great. Don't get me wrong. Everyone has a bit of heritage, but I think for me, what's more important about that isn't the case of going, oh, look how old our business is, and it's more about the idea that I know for me, I'm very aware of where we were 2 generations ago. And so for me, it's about being aware of where we'll be in 2 generations' time and onwards, and recognizing that isn't just that's not just a land grab. That's not just a rush for growth to show value in a cash format. That is about the ups and downs of life and society and community, and that you only get that sort of continuity through a lot of other people. All we do is that we're just a flag bearer for a whole community of people, whether we're the team members or whether they're our customers or suppliers. And I think that's where there is more understanding now, more value. I mean, even to the point, we've always looked to Germany around these sort of middle-sized family businesses. And I remember 2016, I think it was. I remember reading an article about how the UK was a startup capital of Europe. And this great jumped to this great idea, and I was on to different schemes about raising capital. And we're a bricks and mortar business, right? So you go along to these meetings, these events for small businesses, and there would be pre-business there'd be pre-startup stage. Guys who've got ideas, and they'd have angels at the front of the room. They go, "Oh, it's amazing, we love this." And then I would step up and go, "Well, I've kind of got like a food shop, and we already have X number of customers and revenue." And you can see these guys looking at us going, oh, "Sorry, man, it sounds lovely, but I don't know what to do with you, right?" We're going, "Well, we're going to be here in 20 years, 40 years, 2 generations time," and these guys are looking for 5-year valuations and exits. And whereas there starts to be more understanding that our sort of businesses that are looking at bringing value and continuity of being security are essential parts of our structure. Not just, and don't get me wrong, those 5-year exits are important as well. Those valuations are part of the economic landscape. But I think there is much more appreciation of what we bring, but also that there is economic value there as well. I mean, the other thing that I think I look at is just to give an example of that is, I remember again going back to the early 2000s, the early 2010s rather. You're looking at there was just land value. I mean, you wanted to go and find space. The rentals that were being asked for were ridiculous. It's just about what return per square foot is there. Whereas now there's much more understanding that if you get the right sort of business into the right sort of space, the commercial value for all of that area, whether it's in offices or housing, whatever else it might be, it's not just how much can I get for that unit. It's actually the right tenants within the right units bring a whole load of commercial value more broadly. Now, so I think that for me is a point you can talk. Let's talk about the fluffy stuff and the lovely texture stuff that builds community, because that's really important. But you know what? That also adds commercial value back into other parts of the infrastructure. And if that's looked at as a whole, you start to be able to look at it in both the sense of where there is community value that's hugely important to everyone, but also where there's commercial value that sits alongside that. So it has a pragmatic a model to it. And I think that has often been overlooked. And that's what we're starting. That's where I think a lot of that opportunity is that that's one. You hear people talk about post-capitalist approaches. It's not just. I think it's right. It's not just about the responsibility of the directors is to deliver the best returns to the shareholder. And so, the stakeholders, isn't it? We're moving towards the stakeholders. The stakeholders are there. I can tell you, as a generational business, they'll be there in generations' time, right? So that value is spread out over time, and you get that back in, and this. That value then leaches into other businesses that in turn have value, and so I think it's we're starting to see much more appreciation of that. We touched on it earlier on about some of the catering infrastructures, that there's a lot of conversation around what they want to do, but they've yet to get to be able to convert that into their traditional conventional supply chains that are more driven towards a bottom line, short term than long term. But I said, and I think one of the things possibly helping that as well, I think Zingerman's another great example of that, is just you're seeing a generational shift as well. So I mean, I'm early mid-40s, 44. Yeah, I'm still going to be working for another 20 years, right? So you look at the Zingerman guys, what are they? They're in the 60s now, I don't know, late 50s.
Yeah, they're in the 60s, yeah.
All that knowledge and information is coming back down into my generation. So I've got 20 years of trading behind me, so I kind of know what I do, but I've got another 20 years ahead of me. And so you start to see this transfer of knowledge and commercial experience in our sector really becoming much more mature than it was 10, 15 years ago. And I think that for me is exciting, because it isn't just about these kind of these outliers fighting against fighting against the direction of travel that everyone else is heading in. We're starting to get some critical mass, I think, in mature businesses that who want to grow, have the right sort of baseline and structure to support that growth, but they want to grow in the right way that's, as I said, adds value over and above simple cash returns.
It's very interesting. You talked about before thriving versus growth, and then you touched on capitalism as well, because capitalism, in my view, is not a bad thing. It's a tool,
No.
and it's how you use that tool that's important. And we just used it in a very one-dimensional way for a long time. And then you talked about it was about the stakeholders, and I was in a thing yesterday. It was a book launch, and it was a book about time. It's Jacob Dale, and he's been on the podcast talking about time, and he talks about exactly we need to start thinking more about the impact we make, not about what we get in a short time, but actually the impact we can make. And that's both, profitability, of course, and it's healing both people, communities, and the planet. So when we do something, we really need to ask ourselves, like, what is this going to mean in X generation? Is it 3 generation, 5 generation, X decades? You need to ask you those questions as you run business. And I think you were talking about corporates that now as well. We had this talk before we went online as well. They're asking all the right questions, but don't know really where they have to start, because it's such a belief system that needs to be changed, the way of doing things. So first the belief system, then the infrastructure, then these systems and processes, and all the people's belief systems. And it's such a huge turn, and that's actually where smaller businesses really can play a part, because if you can come in with the thinking over the next couple of decades, you can really change things. Definitely, we just talked the food system, I believe, to positive things, because I think there's a lot of willingness right now, but you need inspiration of how to do it. And you need to go and find that in maybe small local businesses where there's not those constraints you see in corporates or belief systems, if we come back to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose, and one of the things, something we looked at and we're working. How do we, how do we get? I think of some examples. So I used, one of the joys of family businesses I've found is that it's one of the few structures that has meant that businesses of all different sort of sizes are comfortable in the same room. Because ultimately the issues around family are exactly the same, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's not business, right? So, whereas if you're a £500 million business talking to, I don't know, £100,000 business, sometimes the two owners they don't want to connect. They're not in the same space. Whereas, that £100,000 business talking about what are they going to do about succession with their kids, with the £500 million business who's talking about what are they going to do about succession with their kids. It's the same thing, right? And I suppose that for me is one of the elements of how do you get big businesses into the same room as small businesses and find the topics that in effect link the two of them. And so that they learn from each other. And I think there's a huge mentoring piece between businesses whereby small businesses can gain huge value from larger businesses uh, and looking at what can be applied to their business and vice versa. And often I think there's fear in small businesses that they'll be patronised, they're not going to be taken seriously, they don't have a place at the table when big business is involved. And sometimes that converts to a tension, almost a negative approach. And in turn, large businesses just don't have the vocabulary, they just don't have the language to be able to engage effectively in SME. But if we can start to knock that, create more forums where there is more exchange of conversation and not silly stuff like, I don't know, whatever's locally important, but actually about structures that can support better supply chains, better consumption, etc. Yeah, I think that's really dynamic. And I guess that's where businesses like ours come in, where we're kind of, I always see ourselves as we're kind of the big fish in the little pond at the bottom. Like for us, we've got to jump into the next pond and be the small fish in that medium-sized pond. But we can take everything we've learned in that smaller pond and start to distribute it out into that light. Yeah, so I think that for me is a core part as we look forward. I mean, it's difficult to change how we've consumed for so long overnight, but I think it's looking at structures and channels and forums that the right conversations that in turn turn into action can take place, that they do. And I think then it comes down to the government, etc., to support those, to critical mass of again business owners and believers who believe it's the right thing to do, and so drive it forward as well. But I think there's a lot of there's a lot of opportunity there.
I love to work with the team over at BizSimply, because they are always striving to get better, 1% better every day. So I had to share this with you, because BizSimply have launched a new blogcast, which highlights some of their favorite Hospitality Maverick podcast episodes over time. And if you're new or hardcore super fan of the show, this is a perfect opportunity to catch up with some of the standout episodes from our massive back catalogue. The Besimply team has and will be extensively transcribing interesting moments from each episode while providing some new insights on our brilliant guests, the Mavericks. There's already some great write-ups with Mavericks like Chef Chantel Nicholson and the co-founder of Singerman's community of businesses, Ari Weinswine. Find them at besimply.com/blog and click blogcast on the right side menu. Enjoy. We dive a bit back into your business, and then it would be great to hear what it's like, because your approach to people, culture. How do you do that? Because I often think that's one of the key ingredients why some businesses thinks differently and actually are acting differently in the way they do, because it starts with the people. And you talked about the people. It was important for your family business through generation. Either it was people on the land, and now it's people coming into the food hub. What is the approach and a philosophy around people?
Yeah. So again, I guess I consider I consider the quirk of just my own position that again I came into a family business, a small family business that had been large as a farm and had shrunk, and so where do I add value into it? My father, coming from an agricultural background on my mother's side, you can imagine it's a fairly patriarchal structure. Yeah, the oldest son takes on the farm and gives it on to the next son, and so that had been the case for what, 3, 4 generations. My grandfather, my great grandfather. Yeah. And my mother, funnily enough, was the oldest of this generation. But my father married into the family here, and so he didn't really have that baggage. And he set up with my mother, obviously, the pick your own and the small farm shop and what have you. What he was a classic hero leader, right? It was he would get stuck in, everything would be solved, right? He would do it all. And so when I started to get more involved in the business, that has real strengths to it because people were inspired by it. They feel safe by it, but it has real negatives, as we know, because they invariably want to do everything themselves and they don't create that ability for others to take on responsibility in the same way. So for me, it was really a case of, well, we've got the business got to where it can get to under that sort of approach. We need to be more open. It needs to be more, it needs much flatter. It needs to be more engaging. It needs to allow others to come in and take responsibility. And not only that, you can't be the best at everything, right? You've got to know what your strengths are and then find others who are better you in other areas. And it goes back again to that point that I felt that having grown up in a farm environment that was quite a high employer, and having seen that dwindle as it went into machinery and smaller numbers, I felt that our business as a service-facing business, as a service business, a front-facing business, a community-based business, had the opportunity to deliver jobs. And often they are entry-level jobs, but it depends on people. So for me, that was very much, I've got to offer something different from that which my parents did. So it is about opening the business up and taking what they've done and pushing it forward and allowing others to come in. And just the reality is that, if there is aspiration of growing a business, allowing it to thrive, then that's only going to occur through a supportive team, a team that works together, that then has a buy-in of its community, as opposed to just an individual who is driven and can work effectively. That has a finite end. Yeah. So that's always been that case. Again, I've also leaned back into that concept of family and how family works, how good families work. When families are at their best, I think they're the best unit there is. And I talk about family not in the sense of just the actual family, but how, there's a level of the respect, the candor, we win our own values, the love, the contentment that comes from a good family unit is absolutely, for me, how a good business should work. So that's always been very much the approach. And I suppose because the business was there, I always look to others as well. Sometimes I think I do get in the way too much. I try and step back from that, but I've looked to open Macknade up as a platform to others so they could see that it would deliver on their aspirations and that they would be able to come into it and find what they wanted and in turn push it through. And just more recently, actually, I was just thinking about this as well. And I think it's quite funny actually listening to a podcast with the rest of the chat. I think it's been on you, but on some other podcast, this name kept popping up, Cameron Herald, is it? I think. Talking very much about the second in command role, right? And that
Yeah.
idea of how much focus gets placed on the leadership and the owner, and actually it's not. It's the others in the business who really keep the business operating and moving forward. And I think that for me has been an important part of is moving from that hero leadership approach of small businesses where it's very much dependent upon one or two people to a collaborative approach wherever we're able to recognise people's strengths and how those strengths can push the business on. Again, you mentioned Zingerman's earlier on. That idea of if someone within Zingerman's has a passion and a skill set, well, let's set up another unit over there that allows them to feel the potential. it's incredible. I think it's an incredible approach.
Yeah, and it is a movie. There's almost there's almost a whole episode of analyzing the Singermans, but that's not for today. So, what if you should take like an issue you would like to see from the industry? Now you're in the interface of both retail, hospitality, experiences economy as well, I would say, and your landlord on top of that.
Yeah.
What is an issue you would like to see go away right now if you can take the magic wand kind of approach, and why?
All sorts of aspects. I thought about the two aspects I would probably look at. Now, one would be I think there are still too many silos. So it is that idea that at the moment channels tend to work in their own channel. There needs to be that. Again, we touched on it already. Whether it's small business working with large business, whether it is different parts of the supply chain working more collaboratively together. We talked about it continually as a retail operator. I think we sit right bang in the middle of the supply chain, and we're just that conduit that really pushes it through. Now, historically, it's been very transactional, even at the small end. I produce something, I give it to you, I sell it to you, you give me the money, and give me a call when you want it again. Whereas, we're really pushing to go, actually, our customers at our consumer end are your producer. As a producer, they're your customers, absolutely your customers. We're just this one continuous. So for me, and then that silence of different sectors and skill sets not talking to each other. Even that split, where, as you said, we have a foot in retail, we have a foot in hospitality, we have a foot in tourism, we have a foot in land management, and actually, we see the fact all of these sectors should be working together far more effectively, and they don't. So it is this siloing that, I think, we just as communities we tend to focus too much on the one element, and they should be far more mixed, and that's something I'd like to see. The innovation across across different sectors and different processes. And the other, then, I think, is we touched on before, is financing and funding, and understand that the idea of patient finance. How are we going to fund this sort of next generation of retailers and operators in a way that the previous models of funding, we could see they put a lot of pressure onto really good businesses, or got them to a certain point, or the very innovators and the very innovation that helped those businesses grow in the first place ultimately was lost because the commercials became the dominant objective. And so I think for me, part of that is understanding funding and financing more effectively. And what needs to be done to really maximise this community value that businesses like Macknade provide. I say, privately owned. I mean, it's the growth that we can get, how we can move forward. So I think that for me is that breaking down the barriers between sectors, the moving away from the idea of siloing, looking at things much more collaboratively as a whole, and then also understanding the funding and financing landscape that supports this next generation of businesses to scale up and take on the responsibilities that they want to take on.
Yeah, I think it comes back to the old paradigm of business thinking as well. We forget we are part of a system, so we need more system thinking. I saw somebody doing a talk about a month ago about this, and she was actually an investor, and she was actually frustrated about the funding models and actually how they didn't take the system thinking around what impact it has on communities or a global context, so donut economics in principle, and actually how we are still making decisions that's very siloed when we talk about funding and who gets the funding and the terms of that funding, and and especially as technology is advancing, maybe humans are not being needed in the same capacity anymore. So how do we actually make sure that everybody has a living and so on?
For me, one of the exciting aspects is that in the hospitality service sector, I can see a direction going whereby, of course, that human touch is going to be valued, right? And actually, it's our accounts, our solicitors, etc., that kind of 70k plus jobs that are going to go with, where, of course, what we're seeing as entry level and that human value really is needed. And that's certainly for us as part of when we look at AI, digital, etc., and we bed this into our systems and improve our productivity, so we can then front load our investment that goes into the team at the front who are engaging with our customers. I think going back to funding as well, for me, yeah, I'd love to see a sort of a portfolio approach from funding, for example, at times whereby you might include within a portfolio high growth businesses that do want to roll out and grow in that. But you might include funding for single site businesses. You know, kind of, we see in the high street, this question around the high street all the time. I mean, businesses that come along that don't want more than one site. They want to do what they do for 20, 25 years, and then they'll be of a certain age. They want to shut it up and they want to go to retirement, and the business will end and move on. Whereas we've kind of come addicted to the idea that the only way you get funding is if you've got some growth strategy that's going to show great returns. Now, but those businesses that whose aspiration is to feed their own direct community and no more than that, but will require funding at given times along their life cycle, if they could be matched into a portfolio of other more racier investments, perhaps, then I think that this starts to become really interesting. But it still seems to be this drive from a funding point of view. Well, the growth, where's that going to be? Where we're going to get the financial returns? And it misses actually when you look at the community basis that there are so many very, very good businesses that will require different types of funding. And yeah, bank debt funding is great and what have you, but could offer alternative opportunities for patient capital, etc., go into them, but that they provide such a valuable resource for the communities. I think that for me is something I'd like to see change, is the fact that when funding's being looked at, otherwise it's kind of, you get the impression it's just kind of debt finance or banking, etc. Whereas you're taking more seriously businesses that got 20, 30 years in them, but will ultimately just pull the rollers down. And actually, that's a wonderful thing. And it's like sitting in high streets at time as well. But, that business closed. Like, poor bit, what happened? They just got it wrong. No, they just, they were ready to retire. Yeah, there was no succession there. They had a fantastic, and it's almost championing those businesses as well, as opposed to seeing them as a negative, right? And I think it's just sometimes it's that idea, and we sort of get into the place that everything's got to scale and grow and be sold on and continue, otherwise it's a failure. Whereas I think, there's a certain joy in a business that's gone 20, 30 plus years and has achieved what it wanted to achieve, provided a good life for its owners, and they're on to the next stage in their life. And I think if there was the right sort of funding for those sort of businesses within a portfolio of those businesses that are required to grow and scale and generate economic value at a higher level, you would find far more people getting into that SME space as well. I think it comes back to that side of, look, can we have more of a mixed approach to innovative thinking as well as to funding, as to balanced portfolios? And I think, for me, that's a real opportunity there.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to, again, the question of time, and actually, giving, businesses time, like Singerman didn't happen overnight. There would be other businesses like Singerman's. You would have Southwest Airlines, even though it's on the stock exchange now. There was also like a very small business at some point, but they decided we're not going to get bigger than this, and then they created this working environment which is about thriving in principle, and it's about employees don't need to go and look at another job. There's something called SRC Holdings in the middle of, I think it's Springfield, Missouri, where they, in principle, do spare parts to tractors, and that business is about people being able to buy their own home. That's like the deep purpose of it, and that's been on for 40 years now, and they're still going with the same chairman. He's the Jack Stack, who was the CEO and now chairman. He's and found a new CEO, but in principle, it's about actually feed the community and the people who works in the community. And these kind of businesses, there's lots of them around. They maybe just need a helping hand to be brought into the new century or a new decade, or they need some learning from these type of businesses, what they've done actually to get to that part.
And I think that's what you do again because that sharing of learning, I think, is hugely important. I found this has been one of the great joys of this explosion of podcasts. But I think, because you're absolutely right. So I look at our own business, and if I'm open about it, we're a good size now as a small business, right? But to get to that next stage, we've got to to where we can afford really to manage a essential admin team that's broad enough to really manage those strategical thinking, long-term strategical thinkings about how do we make sure we create enough interest within our business that's big enough that people can flow through it and they don't need to move out, etc. And I think there is that kind of that sweet spot, that kind of sub 10 million turnover sort of, sort of 7 to 10 million, where revenue's being generated, profitability is there, but actually there are 2-3 roles that are still required to get you onto that next level that allows you to have that kind of central admin team that can. And I think it's getting businesses through that so they get some critical mass that allows them for that managed growth, that patient growth is a key element. And I think seeing what others do, what others have done, and how they've worked through that growth point, for me is really important. And okay, that's the joy of the podcast, right? In the back of the day, I'd go out and find non-exec and what have you, looking around and trying to find this information where you could, but it has become much easier. But I think that for me is a barrier, is an element. How do you get really good, large, small businesses into being that next stage of growing medium-sized businesses and little medium-sized that have the scope to go on from 10 million, 15, 20 and onwards from there. I mean, I use a revenue figure simply as a sort of a metric of size and impact from that point of view. It's much more sophisticated than that, don't get me wrong. But a lot of that is, the cost of an admin team, for example. You've got to know that revenue's coming through to then drop down to profitability to be able to increase the size of that central team that allows for some of this more community-focused activity to occur that is commercial as well.
It comes back to it has to work commercially for being able to
100%.
make impact, as we talk a lot about here on the show. So what has been the significant learnings you've done the last couple of years, especially in a post-pandemic world? Like, is there any thing that's just like, okay, that's very different, that's definitely something I take on as the leader of a business?
Do you know what? It's not so much about sort of coming across differences, and I suppose partly because of the size of business we are, and as I said, how we're looking to step up into that next bracket. But it's speed and agility and focus on our product. And I think, I mean, it just doesn't sound particularly exciting, and I know it gets covered all the time, but it has really come home to me. And again, I suppose I've had one business that failed in that time. We've had success as well in our main business in Macknade here, particularly during in lockdown. We were still trading. There were a whole lot of other pressures, but it created really created a bit of a false environment. And so that idea of really being, again, comes back to the importance of a purpose-driven business and knowing who we are and what we're looking to achieve from an ethos point of view, and focusing in on our core product that allows us to achieve that, and then having a speed of decision to support those aspects. That for me has really been the main learning over the past couple of years. I think, yes, there's all sorts of change, but if you have a clear purpose, a clear vision, you have a clear product that delivers, and you have then the agility and the speed to adapt that product as it might need to, but at its core, it's the right product. That's the core part of moving forward. And again, COVID is a great example. I mean, for us, delivery, in our sector as SMEs, when the supermarkets March 2020 couldn't provide any sort of slots for deliveries, a whole lot of new customers flooded into the independent sector. Your phone calls, can you deliver to us? And of course, a lot of independents jumped on that, but the costs implications were huge, right? Just weren't sustainable. So it is that sort of element of going, okay, just remember that actually what we do well is deliver experience-based bricks and mortar emotive retail. And yes, delivery is an option there, but it needs to be looked at in the context of, are we bringing our communities together around incredible food and drink? And that includes not stressing our teams out, giving them a decent time as well. And are we focusing on our core business? And then you look at something like the option for delivery in a more focused approach and go, yeah, it's a great option, but it's not our core business. Our core business is bringing people into incredible spaces and attracting our revenue through that.
Yeah, to come back to, I was thinking, as you were saying, I was thinking about one of my favorite books, so probably my Bible, is Good to Great by Jim Collins, where he talks about the hedgehog concept. And it's actually really about uniting what is it that you're really good as a business. So what are you passionate about? What can you actually deliver on very excellent? And how you're making money out of that. And then just continue refining that. That's your job, not creating 10 different concepts you're trying to do well. So
Yes,
delivery is a different business concept, and I've tried the delivery well. It's logistics suddenly, and that's why Amazon you have to be an Amazon really to do it well, or DPD.
I love it. Different opportunities. Let's jump in. Let's have a look. It's exciting. Let's have a look. And we can do. And that's part of my personality, I guess. And that comes back to what I said earlier on about a strong team and working as a team collectively. And this is something we've learned as a team as well, where you might have a couple of charismatic individuals who do get drawn. Is actually that's balanced out by a conventional, slightly more conservative. Go, well, let's have a look at this a bit more closely. Does it stick to our purpose? Is it what we're good at? And delivery is a prime example. Like a business like ours is based on emotive engagement. Yeah, and you turning around and go, well, how do you, and yes, I think that there's an opportunity and there's a challenge to see how you transfer that into a digital platform and delivery. But on the surface of it, you go, you know, people love coming into our spaces. They love dwelling. They love talking to us. And there we are trying to,
Mm.
and not only that, they do it off their own costs. You know, they come to our space. They then do their own shopping. They then stay, and yet we're trying to jump into a space where we're doing all that work when it's not it's never been a core part of what we do. And in turn, we can't add that added value in quite the same way as we do them. And so it's those moments of finding that it seems quite simple and obvious, but no, these have been important learning elements. And for me, I suppose it's given real strength to the idea of, yeah, I'm excited by what's, you know, AI does, by you know, sort of type of productions we now, protein productions we now have, the opportunities around. But actually, it comes back to the value of human connection, the value of the physical, the value of produce, and that without doubt, I think has been not, also has been underlined just how important that is. And but to do it well, there's an expectation from the consumer. It's got to be done well, because there are other options out there that mimic the physical, that mimic the yes, produce. And so as a result, if you're actually doing it, do it well and show that's what counts.
How do you, as the lead, the head, the CEO, actually show up in as the best version of yourself every day and deliver your role? And also because it seems like it's been a long journey. You've been part of the business all your life, and I guess there's some reinventing that needs to happen on that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I'm honest, I don't think I always do. Yeah, I'm not always the best I can be. I think again, it's what's worked for me more recently, and it's not is having that the clarity of, uh, of purpose, of objective. And so, part for me, the challenge now is making sure that that is then embedded and is clearly communicated through the business, and that's something I need to do more of. I suppose that challenge in its own right is what drives me forward. And then seeing, we touched on this earlier on, that actually Macknade was a family business. You know, it is a family business, but it's grown so much more than that. It's now a platform for others, and it really is delivering in its own right as an organism in its own right, not because it's Stefano's business or Stefano's family business, but because it's Macknade. A lot of people have value and have bought into that and understand how it will deliver for them. So I suppose that excites me, and that has changed from, as I said, when it was my parents were leading the business. It's very much their business and they were leading it. Whereas over time, it has now become Macknade and Macknade's communities business. And so as that business has moved and shaped, it's sort of reinvigorated me anyway. But I think it's just having that clarity on, yeah, human and environmental harmony. And I love that idea, that infinite goal of, you know, you're never going to achieve it, you keep pushing towards it. Yeah, I love food and drink. I'm blessed to be in a sector that means a huge amount to me. I guess if my family, if my business was nuts and bolts or tires, I don't know, yeah, it'd be difficult, right? Whereas,
Yeah,
you know, food and drink, and the beauty of food and drink is that it's not just an incredible product. It really is what makes us human. You know? I mean,
yeah,
of very few other things. Yeah, reproduction perhaps is the only other element that we've taken and turned into something that defines who we are as individuals, as small collectives, as larger
yeah.
collectives. And so I think that for me, there is always an aspect there. But I think, you know, I've learned more and more that you have got to think about leadership and think about how you are presenting yourself as effective as you can. There's a process to that. It isn't just a case of turning up. You've got to think about it and make sure you spend some time making sure that you are in the right frame of mind. That 2 months' time, where are you going to be in 6 months' time? What are you looking to achieve? How's that going to impact on others? And actually, you know, some of the questions you asked made me think about something else. It was that idea that what at times may look like either a sudden decision or a change of direction is something that would have been considered and mulled over. And that's something I tend to do. I try and scenario run continually in my own head. And so, whilst at times something may seem reactive and whether people are impressed by it or not, but it's something actually you're continually looking at different scenarios. You're thinking, well, what if I do that? And so it is running those different scenarios in your head, what the different outcomes would be. But ultimately, it's just, you know, creating a space that we all love. And it's not just me doing it. You know, I recognise my role. I'm the flag bearer. I'm up at the top of the hill waving the flag, which, I mean, it's simply to draw attention to what everyone else does in Macknade as a whole. And that really is the key to it. It's doing it together, yeah, do it collectively, and having a clarity of vision that you want to achieve and communicating it through that we all agree with.
What is your top advice to other businesses or business leaders that want to create a business as a force for good?
Yeah, you've got to believe it in yourself, right? You've got to understand what it is that you, yeah, to not wanting to dive off too far. But my God, my oldest daughter's 13, so she's going to GCSEs, and I remember when we were doing GCSEs a googly number of years ago. You were told, yeah, if you know what you want to do as a job, and then you're going to find the courses you've got to do, and you've got to do the difficult, you've got to hammer them away and learn them. There's no sense of enjoyment. Whereas now there's much more this mantra saying, listen, you choose the courses that you enjoy, yeah? Because if you enjoy something, you're going to be turning up at our lessons every day willingly. You're not going to be pushed in by your parents and dragged in by your teachers. It's the same thing with work, isn't it? If you believe in it, if you enjoy it, you're going to put everything into it. So you've got to find that it'll be absolutely clear that you're 100% bought into your business and your vision. And I think you've got to spend a bit of time breaking it down, because they don't just, this idea of purpose and vision doesn't just pop up. It's not just what it is, it's the ability to communicate it to yourself and to others. And I spent quite a lot of time on that. We're not still fully there. So I think it is that, is identifying it as an individual. What is it you're looking to achieve in your business and more broadly in your life as a whole? And then spending time to be able to understand how you communicate it to others so that they understand what you want to do and they want to come along with you. And and it's got to be something you love. You got to want to do it all the time.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. You said it's not something you just figure out and then that's what you pursue. Sometimes it feel like some people have got a calling. They actually worked through a process and had a lot of mistakes done, and the first version of the vision was not really good for you or in your circumstances. So you retweak it and you maybe grow away from where you are. You need to, I think Singerman is a great example of starting with one deli and now 18 businesses. Is it because also the founders or the business owner needed new challenges? So that's in a way, and they redefined what the business was and what you are yourself as a leader. And I think that's really, really important as well, that you actually accept that there will be lots of mistakes made on that way, and you're not going to get clarity because you do one vision. You need probably to mull over it 1,000 times to really get it right and get all the elements and really feel that that's your soul. Now I'm in it. This is my journey in a way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is one of, and this, for me, for so long, you always think that successful businesses had it nailed on from day one, right? And this just isn't the case, I'll give you, if I'm sort of talk frankly about it, as I said last year, I had a close a business down, you know, before that, people look at what we did because we're very front facing. Oh, everything you touch turns to gold. It's fantastic. Look at all the things you're doing. And then, actually something doesn't work, and good reasons it didn't work. And you look at it, and all of a sudden you've got that juxtaposition where people are going, well, so the year previously, look what you're doing, look how you're charging, and then you're not. And it's kind of, the reality is that the business goes up and down and works forward. But if you have that vision of where you want to get to, what you want to do, and that's continually there for you, even as you sort of you take a bit of a downturn in some areas, you can look at that downturn in the context of a step towards where you want to, a positive step, should I say, towards where you want to eventually get to. So I think it doesn't just happen overnight. It takes thinking, it takes talking, it takes working with your team, working with your family, working with your friends. All these elements come together to get that sense of what you want to do and where you want to be. But for me, you've got to be it all the time. It's not about, you haven't touched on this kind of idea that's thrown around all the time, sort of life, sort of balance. It's work-life balance and the rest of it. It's just, it comes back to that harmony in your own life. You got to feel that you're getting what you require, not that you're compartmentalizing it in its sort of neat boxes that then link towards. You've got to be content and have a balance in that. I think the other, sorry, just last thing I'll say on it as well, Michael, is that idea around value as well. If you're attaching it all to cash, don't get me wrong, that's great. But the reality of it is that if you're looking at purpose, I mean, when you achieve, for me, is this again, because we're front-facing food and drink, one of our butchers has just moved on to become the manager of a butchery elsewhere, and I'm sad to lose him. But we talked about it. Goes, what I've learned over these 4 years working with you and our approach to supply chain, meat supply chain, full carcass, pasture fed, positive impacts on biomass, all this is soil health, these things that he was just a butcher. Now he's going to go on, set up his own counter elsewhere, and he's taking all that with him. For me, that is the value in that is incredible. Right? Because that is absolutely the purpose we're driving, because we know that he will change other customers that aren't directly coming through Macknade. He will change their thinking and their approach to protein, meat, etc. And actually, you know what? The cash value will be this. I know he'll come back into us should he want to at a later stage in his career. I'm sure he'll be talking about customers, about Macknade, and they'll come back in, and so there'll be that aspect of. So you'll see the commercial element attached to it, but that purpose. If the commercial is at the front end, how much do I want to earn? How much do I want to get? You're not going to be a purpose-driven business. It has to be commercially viable. Don't get me wrong, but the satisfaction you get from achieving those moments of achievement within your purpose. Yeah, those are the things that got to drive you, and if that's what feels special. And I suppose it comes back to family. I wish we on now, man, but it comes back to the idea of family. Those moments that you get as fact. I talk about fireside feeling. It's that. At home we used to have an open fire. I wasn't a big one, open fire, but in the winter, as the winter comes in, and all your family are in that front room, and you're sat around the fire, and someone's reading, I don't know, someone's playing a game, and you just feel the pit of your stomach, that contentment. That for me is the value, and that is a purpose. And when you get that contentment in the pit of your stomach, it doesn't come from having a big paycheck. You might think it does, but it comes from seeing that contentment around you. That for me is the absolute goal. Is that idea? It just reminds me of those being in the front room with my family, just looking around and seeing everyone just in their own worlds, content together, the warmth of the fire coming out. Fireside feeling. It's just we're at a body. Do you know what I mean? That for me is what we aim for. And you can do that on a small scale, you can do it on a large scale, but it's got to be the absolute aim.
I love that. That's a great metaphor of, building a great place, for people, community, and the planet, because that contentment is what we all in deeply down hunger for as human as well, and so feeling safe and so on. Last two questions, Stefano, because we can continue for hours, and we knew that before we started. But we have to have an end, as any good thing has a start and an end. But what is the one question you wished I've asked you that I didn't ask you, and what would it be? And what is the answer?
Yeah, again, we touched on it again, but it was, I suppose, how are we going to fund this change? How do we fund this? Let's just change this shift in retail, hospitality, and business operations. I suppose that, and again, that'd be a question to ask me because I don't have the answer, right? And so hopefully it stimulates the conversation further for another day.
Yeah.
And how because I think it's exciting. I look at our sector, see where the opportunities are there, but then let's look at the pragmatic reality of actually we can talk about it, we can get excited about it, but how do we actually move this on practically?
I guess we all have to be part of contributing to that, answering the funding, and also how we use that funding, and what kind of models we build so that funding is used in the right way. So we create that fire, the open fire in the end.
Exactly. I think, again, you're absolutely right. It's just that idea, even I always, dream the idea of having, you see the price of tickets on the side of products, that almost you have these, you can't get all the value that's in there as well. So when we talk about funding, not only that capital funding coming in, but the community itself understands value, understands what they're actually paying for when they purchase products, etc. That there's an awful lot more than simply that transaction of product at the till. So no, I think it's a big part of looking at the future.
Where can people find out more about you, Macknade? Where's the best place to connect?
Yeah, all over. So website's www.macknade.com. We try and keep everything simple, just macknade.com. And so email stefano@macknade.com. And we're on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Enjoy LinkedIn more and more from a business point of view, and use that great to LinkedIn, to connect with people and ideas and follow through. But again, across social media, again, we're front-facing business, so you'll find if you chuck Macknade in, and it's Macknade, you'll find all sorts of stuff that we do. But no, just for us, I see ourselves as that forum as well, that we just want people to engage. We're just a point that people can come and engage with us wherever they are on the supply chain, whatever their thoughts are, and always love sharing ideas and chuntering away. And the joy is we have a coffee machine, right? So it's always good to share a coffee and talk about these aspects too.
Yeah. Well, the best thing I could advise is to go there and visit you. That's then you understand it much better, what it's all about. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Stefano. Power and energy to you and the team as you are continuing the journey a little bit every day to get in the right direction of your purpose and making the world a little bit better.
Thank you, man. And not just saying for the sake of it, but I really appreciate what you do. I was saying, giving a voice to the sort of SMEs like us as well, and bringing in all these other networks. Like you said, the Zingermans of the US. I feel as though we're part of the same space through the work you're doing. We talked about this before, and it's an absolute joy to be involved in it. So thank you.
Thank you, Stefano.